for potentially the last time on this YouTube channel, let's talk about this trade. Because with the news yesterday that one PK Subban was going to retire, yes, you probably had already seen it because it was a pretty big deal. I mean, there was a few big pieces of news yesterday, but the PK Subban one was part of many. You might have seen that Subban posted a graphic of himself plus the little thank you letter saying that he is going to retire. And before we get into the big topic here, hey, PK Subban had a fantastic career, not only as just a straight-up hockey player, but as a hockey personality as well. The way he was going out there, donating to charities, doing broadcasts on TV, having his own podcast. PK was one of the most influential hockey people in the 2010s, and it was coupled with a few pretty good successes as well. A Norris Trophy, an Olympic gold medal, plus the Stanley Cup Finals in 2017. PK Subban was a decorated player, and with his retiring being announced yesterday, it brought up a discussion as to the trade that pretty much started it all. And it's one that we've talked about a ton. We made a video initially back when the trade was made. We made another video, what was it, like 2 or 3 years later? We made another video last year saying that the trade was, at the time, a win-win. And now this might be the last time we talk about it. Let's talk about PK Subban getting traded for Montreal Canadiens former captain Shea Weber. Now, back when the trade was made, PK Subban was seen as just an absolute stud of a defenseman. He was coming off a Norris season in 2013 wherein he was under a point per game. He had himself a 51-point year in only 68 games with the Habs in 2015-16. The season before that, he had 60 points in a full 82, plus 8 points in 12 games in the playoffs. In the very famous Canadiens third-round appearance in 2013-14, PK Subban had 14 points in the 17-game sample over there. Sure, he won an Olympic gold medal for Team Canada, only playing one game in the process, but he was still a part of the championship-winning squad. Subban was a young up-and-comer, and combined with the charity donations to the hospital in Montreal, plus the bromance that he had with Carey Price, PK was seen as a fan favorite. However, his contract was pretty big. He was making $9 million as an AAV as a member of the Montreal Canadiens from 2014 up until 2022. In 2016, shortly after the contract was given to PK, he was traded over to the Nashville Predators in exchange for one Shea Weber, who is a lot older than PK and a much different type of player than PK. Where PK was an agile defenseman with some swagger and pizzazz in his game, Shea Weber was just an absolute brick wall. He wasn't the fastest guy out there, but he was one of the most difficult to get around if you're an opposing player. He had a big booming shot and some offensive prowess that allowed him to produce some pretty good point production metrics as well. Weber, as a member of the Nashville Predators, had multiple 50-point seasons, and he was an absolute goal-scoring machine as a defenseman. The trade of Weber for Subban was 1-for-1, and a lot of people back then, myself included, kind of said, hey, PK Subban is looking to being a better player in the long term. Sure, Shea Weber is a good guy now, but Weber's a lot older, his contract is longer as well. Shea Weber's making $7.8 million a season till 2026, so yeah, a very big contract signed before the current restriction of 8 years was applied to the National Hockey League and its salary formation. But it's not like either of these teams, the Canadiens or the Predators, were getting bad players per se. Sure, you could say that PK and the way he was playing back then was supposed to project to being better in the long term, but for Shea Weber, he still was competent enough for Marc Bergevin and the Canadiens to take a chance on his services. Right away, though, PK Subban did very good things for the Nashville Predators. He was a part of a very good top 4 decor in the NHL, with Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, and Ryan Ellis. These 4 made the best top 4 we had seen in the NHL in a long time. And his first season in Nashville saw him making the Stanley Cup Finals. PK had 40 points in 66 games played, and he followed that up by getting 59 points in 82 games the next year. A few more years down the line, though, PK Subban started going down a pretty sharp decline, as his 31 points in 63 games played sort of signaled what would have been the beginning of the end for PK and his NHL career. He got traded over to the Devils in a pretty big swap alongside of that $9 million AAV contract with no salary retained, where he ended up finishing his NHL contract. Now, the Devils weren't really the best team in this time frame, and PK wasn't the best player either. He kind of lost the offensive touch, and he wasn't really all too reliable as he had been in the past, but at the end of the day, he had a 22-point season in 77 games played in his final National Hockey League year. Definitely not bad, especially for a guy who's 33 years old, and who is kind of leaving in a state where if he wanted to play another season, he probably could. He's just not waiting until the point where he is completely done and unable to play to call his career quits. But either way, when PK was traded over to the New Jersey Devils, the Predators eventually got themselves a draft pick that they sent away to Philadelphia, getting a prospect or two in Igor Afanasyev and Alexander Campbell, two guys that are still in their prospect system today, and who I think have pretty good potential. This is the ultimate finalized return for Nashville. Meanwhile, if you go over to Shea Weber and what he did with the Montreal Canadiens, he suited up for this team starting out with 42 points in 78 games played, and quickly established himself as an absolute leader. He was still the rock, the brick wall, and the defensive juggernaut that he had been in Nashville, but his overall ability was just taken over north of the border. He eventually had himself a few more years battling injuries while still scoring a whole bunch of goals. He had back-to-back 14 and 15 goal years for Montreal in 2018 to 2020, and eventually in 2021, Shea Weber made the best impact he would make with this Montreal Canadiens squad as he captained the team to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, sure, he only had 6 points in 22 games and 19 points in 48 games in the regular season, but Shea Weber was playing so much, and he was so heavily relied upon that the value he brought to the team extended so far beyond just the raw hard point totals. Eventually, it was revealed that he was actually not able to play anymore after the Stanley Cup Finals run, and that final series probably would be the last moments of Shea Weber suiting up for an NHL team, period. He's still got a whole bunch of years left on his huge contract till 2026, but Weber is just not healthy enough to play. As a result, the Canadiens traded Weber over to the Vegas Golden Knights for the purpose of them putting him on the LTIR, and the Canadiens received Evgeny Dadonov in return, who is probably going to be a nice top 6 forward for the team and some good trade bait in the 2023 trade deadline. So at the end of the day, both the Montreal Canadiens and the Nashville Predators benefited greatly from the PK Subban and Shea Weber deal, as they had both made the Stanley Cup Finals in different years, and they both received assets when they traded these guys away that can still help out their team in the future. If Evgeny Dadonov can be some pretty good trade bait and get some good return for the Montreal Canadiens, assuming they're pretty bad in 2022, 2023, and they want to trade Dadonov away for a prospect or two. And when PK was traded away from Nashville, there was a package in return that eventually traded down into Alexander Campbell and Igor Afanasyev. So these two guys are pretty much in the Nashville system as a direct result of PK Subban's trade away to New Jersey. But at the end of the day, with both PK and Shea pretty much not playing anymore, this trade is kind of set in stone and it is done. Sure, there could be an extra layer or two added on depending on what the Canadiens get when they eventually trade Evgeny Dadonov in 2023, but there still is just so much that we can adore out of both of these guys. Shea Weber is not going to play again because he's pretty much out. He's got a contract going on till 2026, so there's no real reason for him to go out there and retire. But for PK, the time was right. He had himself an expired contract. This was the out. This was the opportunity for him to call it quits, and he took it, and he took it in stride. So, talk to the comments all your thoughts about PK Subban and Shea Weber. Man, it's been so long. I remember when that trade was made in 2016, and we made a video talking about it, and I was super excited, and I was 16 years old back then, man. I was 16 talking about hockey trades on YouTube. We had also made a video the same day talking about Taylor Hall and Adam Larson because that trade also went down. You gotta remember those things, man. Steven Stamkos also signed with the Lightning again on that same day, so it was a pretty big day in the hockey world. I think a lot of people will remember the pandemonium that was that 1 or 2 hour span or whatever the heck it was, but Either way, talk in the comments all your thoughts about PK Subban and Shea Weber. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj Rolls 99, and bye.